So thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
We prepared some questions, and then we both looked at them and both decided they're a little bit boring, but I'm not going to go off script too much. Now, Google is the role model for many entrepreneurs in Europe, and having them as an investor or an affiliated company may not sound like a bad idea. Have entrepreneurs ever turned you down?
Personally, me, it hasn't happened so far with GV. But let me answer it differently. The reason why GV is so attractive is because we have an entire operational team. These are GV employees, not Google employees. It's important to mention. About 40 to 50 people who spend 80% of their time working with our portfolio companies. So these are engineers, product managers, marketers, PR, partnership, designers, who will come and help the companies as and when needed with, for example, they're launching a new product and would like to do a design sprint. The design team will come and work with the people within the company and help them with that. Or they're building a new infrastructure in their company. They can leverage our many experts in whether it be AI, whether it be ad tech, you name it. And so that's one of the big attractions to GV. On top of that, we are a sister company to Google within the Alphabet umbrella, and as a result, we can easily make any form of introduction to anyone at Google should the companies ask for them. We can bring the people to the table, but we obviously can't influence what happens from then on.
Okay.
And that's been, from a GV standpoint, really a main appeal to entrepreneurs and a differentiator, especially in Europe.
And when we think about Google, it's a huge company, and there are lots of different areas. And I guess for not missing the obvious talent or the entrepreneur, they thought, oh, let's set up a VC fund and make sure we also get the ones which we don't employ, but at least we can invest in them. Is that the right rationale, or is it like a breeding ground for the next big Alphabet subsidiary?
No, so as I mentioned, we are completely financially driven, so there's no strategic link to Google.
So it's simple, we want to have a return on the investments we make.
Correct.
We have the expertise, we probably get great inbound deal flow.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's structured as a separate fund. We invest across the US and Europe right now. The 2016 fund is a $475 million fund. All the general partners get equity in the fund. That's how we're incentivized. We're not incentivized by how Google does operationally.
Understood.
And so
that's good. And you have outside investors, or is it just Alphabet?
No, Alphabet is the sole LP.
The sole investor. And I saw really great stuff what you do to your portfolio companies. There's this little company called Uber, and I was very astonished, surprised, and I thought, look, the left hand and the right hand are working together. When I look at maps, in London, there was like the estimated time it takes to go with an Uber, and it was integrated. How did this initiative started? I mean, I don't know if you know of it, but I found it as a great example.
So these are partnerships, and I don't know specifically how this one happened, but across our portfolio, you'll find partnerships with Google that happen, and they may be generated by introductions that we make,
right,
and then the companies will decide how they take it along, or they may actually be connections that they had before. But as I said, we cannot really influence what happens, but we will give the advantage of it's one phone call away to bring you guys together and create partnerships like some of the one you described.
And especially when it makes a lot of sense, right?
Correct.
Independent of who owns what.
Correct.
What did you do before? How did you get to Google Ventures?
Sure. So I, right before Google Ventures, I was running my own business, which I co-founded with my business partner. It was an online marketplace for independent brands, and I did that for about 4.5, 5 years. Before that, I did 2.5 years of VC initially in London with Accel Partners. That was my first experience there.
That's where we met with Komoli. I did the Fotolia deal back then. Oh, now I remember. So let's talk about Europe. You spent some time here. how important is Europe for Google Ventures? Do you have offices in Europe? How many? You mentioned you have 40 investment professionals. How many are in Europe versus?
Sure. So Europe is extremely important for us. The two regions we invest in are the U.S. and Europe. Across the board, the $475 million fund. There's no quota.
It's a global fund.
It's a global U.S. Europe.
Yeah.
And we opened the office in London in September 2014. Initially, it started in 2009 only in the US. We now have an office in London, as I mentioned, with 2 GPs, myself and my partner Tom. There's 1 GP in Boston with our life science team, and we have 7 GPs in California. So that's the way the team is structured.
So you work out of London?
So I work out of London. And in terms of the operational resources that I mentioned, most of them are based in California. There's some in New York, some in Boston. But no matter where you are, so our portfolio companies in Europe have access to them either physically, they'll fly in, or obviously through calls, hangouts, etc.
Okay, so Google Ventures is very much focused on Europe. That's great to hear. What type of entrepreneurs you like to invest in? What is your sweet spot deal?
Sure. So in terms of the type of entrepreneurs and the type of companies, we like bold entrepreneurs.
Large markets?
Large markets, bold entrepreneurs. We have an LP who has high level of risk, right? So we can make these investments, these bold investments, and we're looking for entrepreneurs who are trying to make really a transformational difference within their sector, something that's an exponential change, not just an incremental difference in what they're doing. And that sector runs across technology and life science. So in 2015, about 30% of our investments went into life science, and the rest was across technology and consumer, mobile.
So you also do life science?
We also do life science, yes. Yeah.
Interesting.
And as I mentioned, our main life science team is based out of Boston. And we do them in Europe as well as we do in the US.
So you look, first of all, for passionate and entrepreneurs with visions who really want to go for a big opportunity rather than for an opportunistic, copycat kind of feature change, small market.
Yes.
And then how do we need to think about check sizes, like how much capital you put to work? And I think you're also one of those investors who follow, right?
Yes. So we will invest anywhere from Series A to Series DE, which means check sizes of a couple million to 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and more. We used to do a lot of seed. We do them much less now, but we call ourselves...
a lot of work, no?
Well, we have a lot of capital to deploy as well. Yeah. So in terms of a lot of work, we have the resources, but we need also to make sure we deploy them efficiently.
So 2 million to 50 plus. And country-wise, is there any specific focus you have? Or?
No, it's across the US and Europe, really. So there's no...
And what did you do so far in Europe? Have there been some...
So we've done, since we started, we've done 10 investments.
Already? Wow.
Yes, we've done about 7 in the UK, so it's been very heavily UK focused, 2 in Ireland and 1 in Sweden.
And are there like some big names which we probably heard of?
So Cobalt, you may have heard of, that we invested in. On the life science side, Oxford Science Innovations is another one that we invested in. And GMI is another one in Ireland, which we just announced recently.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you said the fund is 450, but I think you alone invested in Uber 200 or 250.
So the fund is an annual fund, and the fund for 2016 is 475.
Yeah.
We have a 2015 fund. So the 2015, we actually had 2 funds. We had a US fund, which was 300 million, and a European fund, which was our first fund here, 125
but now
million.
you're bringing them to one.
So now we have a global fund, but every year we have a new fund, which allows us to deploy capital in the way.
If I would be fundraising, I would call you immediately. Now the question is, when should I call you? Is it important that there has already been an investor in there, or do you like to be the first institutional money in? Do you have co-investor? You like we go always for minority?
No, so we we're always minority investors. We co-invest a lot, so the majority of our deals are deals that we've co-invested in. And generally, because we don't go seed, there will be some investors in before us. Could be angel investors or small
But would you
financial
also invest
institutions.
in a company where there's no institutional money in?
So we've done that. One investment that we made in Europe, in Sweden, Resolution Games, from memory, I don't believe had any.
Because in Europe we have a
And
lot
it's
of
a VR
companies. We had,
company.
2 years ago, we checked the top 20 internet companies in Europe, and half of them never raised any money. Fotolia never raised any money.
And there's another one we invested in, Lost My Name, didn't have institutional investors
Okay, so that's
either.
not a precondition.
No, not at all. Because as you said, Europe has a lot of great bootstrapped companies, and we like those.
And exactly, and segment, yeah, it's good discipline also, you know, when
Correct.
you get it to work without any funding.
Yeah.
Speaking from my own experience. Are there any segments you're more interested in than others? I mean, they're the classical e-commerce things. Is that stuff you look at? Or what really fits well to Google Ventures?
So we like, when in the technology side, and I'm mostly focused on tech, so I'll speak to that.
Yes.
We like where there's a heavy technology component in those. But we have done and look at mobile consumer just as much as we look at AI, we look at VR. I've spent a lot of time looking at VR. I also spend a lot of time looking at the e-commerce infrastructure space. So whether it be optimization technology or payment or fraud or shipping. So really, as long as there's a significant technology component in there, and as we mentioned before, a large market where the entrepreneur, the company is trying to really change that market and make an exponential difference. That's where we have fun and what we like.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for being here. We are very proud.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.